This is the New American Media.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles to be specific. Hello everybody and welcome to our Friday episode of the Unhappy Hour. It's Valentine's Day 2014. Are you happy or unhappy? Listen, here's a tip. If you need someone in your life to make you happy, then it's probably time to work on you. If you have somebody in your life that is complimenting who you are, then kudos, you might have figured yourself out a little bit. It's when we become desperate, it's when we become attached and clingy and needful of somebody around us, is when we kind of lose track of who we are. So remember that on this Valentine's Day. Appreciate the ones you have. If it ain't working, hey, switch directions. It's better for both of you. And if you're lonely today, don't you worry. Don't you worry. You're probably no lonelier than Chris Grant of the Cleveland Cavaliers is after he's been fired as GM. Only to see the team rattle off 4 straight wins and have Anthony Bennett actually step up and do a little bit of decent basketball playing. So yeah, not as lonely as it is for Mike Lombardi and Joe Banner and Rob Chudzinski of the Browns, but we'll get to all that in just a quick second. It's going to be a really cool show today. Excuse me. We're going to have Dan Johnson, founder of PANDA, People Against NDAA. He's going to be on the program on Agree to Disagree. That's coming up at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific. And we are also going to talk with Rob Troutman from Sports on Tap about the Cleveland Browns. But without any further ado, excuse me. Oh, I almost forgot. Just like a lot of you guys probably almost forgot to get something for your significant other on this Valentine's Day. All right, stop. Anyway, I almost forgot. Really quick, if you haven't checked out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com, please do so. We have new music stuff up there, new spirituality stuff up there. Had a really cool Conscious Life Expo panel. Got to talk with George Norrie and Greg Braden and David Wilcock and just a whole bunch of cool cats. I got some good interviews, some good questions up there. Take a look, thenewamericanmedia.com, our homepage. Scan around. We've been doing this for almost 3 years. Go figure. If you're not linked up on social media, you have to do that. On Twitter, we're at American_media_. Follow us. At American_media_. Follow us. On Facebook, do a search of The New American Media with spaces in between and like our page. I think that's all linked up at our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com, on the bottom right-hand side. And on YouTube, youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. Click subscribe. We're almost at 200,000 video views. Good times. So now, without further ado, let's get Zak Baris, NBA scout, into the program. He's a lifelong Cleveland sports fan and NBA scout. Regular contributor here at The Unhappy Hour. I always love this part of the show.
Hello.
Zach, welcome to the Unhappy Hour. I was just saying, I love this part of the show where I dial live and it rings, and I wonder, are they going to answer? Are they going to be there? Zach, sir, how are you doing on this wonderful Valentine's Day?
Oh, happy Valentine's Day to you.
Aw, Zach, I could just pinch your cheek. Yeah, welcome back to the program. Keeping in theme with Valentine's Day, we do love having you on the program. Not like that, but we do appreciate all of your insights. And everybody, if you're not following Zach on Twitter, you need to do so. Always tweeting sports and occasionally some ridiculous and some hilarious stuff. He's at Z Baris, at ZBARIS. Follow him on Twitter. So Zach, I led the beginning of this program saying that if you don't have a significant other, don't you worry about it. You got to work on you, and you don't need someone in your life. You should want to have someone in your life, and it should complement you, not define you. And I said you can't be any lonelier than Chris Grant is right now, former GM of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He gets the axe by Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cavaliers, and what do you know? They rattle off 4 straight wins, and Anthony Bennett starts looking like an NBA player. So I don't know where you want to pick it up, but the 4-game winning streak sounds like a good place for me.
Color me as one who's just shocked. I mean, I really have nothing else to say other than the fact that I really am just surprised by this. I mean, I really didn't think firing the general manager would do anything. I thought, maybe it lit a spark under this team because they've won 4 in a row for the first time since LeBron left.
Yeah, 2010, I think it said, right?
Yeah, 2009, 2010, that season, yeah. And it's been a miserable 3.5 years in Cleveland.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
For the Cavaliers. And finally, they look like they're starting to pick up steam. Let's see if this persists. Let's see if it lasts. Like I said, I really hope it does for them. I really do. But if they can somehow manage to climb back into that playoff spot, that 8th seed, maybe it'll be good for them. I tend to think that they need the lottery pick, but if they start playing good basketball, that's the most important thing. They need to be playing good basketball.
Yeah, and they have
and
not
it looks
been
like
playing.
Dion and Kyrie are playing well together. I mean, I haven't honestly watched a lot of the Cavs over the last week. I've been too busy doing other stuff. And the Cavaliers are not my number one priority when it comes to basketball. But I do watch them.
Well, let me focus on this particular component of it. You said, well, apparently this might have lit a fire under him. I didn't really expect that firing the GM was going to really ripple down to the players, because it almost seems like, okay, those are the suits and we're the players, like a separate entity. But there really is a correlation between canning Chris Grant, yeah, sorry bro, you gotta go, and this team like, oh wow, maybe we could be next. Do you think it was a direct correlation there, or just all coincidence?
I really have no clue. I mean, if I was inside the locker room, I could tell you, but I'm not. And it may have put the scare into the players. I really don't know. I mean, I think some of them now are fighting for the jobs, and they realize they have to play well in order to have jobs next year. Some guys are on contract years. Obviously Kyrie Irving's going to get that max extension, but not everyone will. Guys like Dion Waiters need to play better. Anthony Bennett's finally whipped into shape. I think what it took was getting him. This is a guy who was a good player at UNLV. I watched him last year. I thought he was very good. I really liked him. And getting a guy like Bennett to come into the organization who wasn't ready, was a tweener, he's coming off of a shoulder injury, didn't condition. I knew about his character concerns last year. There were the issues of him getting late night takeout every night of the week. There were all these issues last year, but I thought basically throw him under the rug. It wasn't that big of a deal. And obviously with his shoulder, when he put on all that weight, you can tell the difference now from him from game 1 to where they're at now to game 50. He looks like he's finally starting to drive to the hoop. He's being aggressive around the rim. His shot percentage is much higher. He's not just jacking up shots when he has them open. He's actually playing fundamental basketball, and it's definitely played a big part for the kids. Now, he hasn't been great. He played one really, really good game.
Right.
A hell of a game, actually. But other than that, he's been all right. But you just want to see some progress from him. Kyrie looks like he's starting to care. Dion still cannot finish at the rim. I mean, if that guy could honestly just finish, he'd be an unbelievable player.
Yeah, and you've been saying that for a long time.
I was shocked that they came back the other night. That's a game they would have given up on the first 40-something games there. They would have given up on that one against the Pistons, especially without Baris in the lineup. I'm shocked they won because, with Greg Monroe and Andre Drummond, who was going to stop them? And Tristan had the game of his life.
Oh,
he really
playing
looked
killer.
fantastic.
And that was a Chris Grant pick, right?
Yeah, but, the Jonas Valanciunas, those are things. Those comparisons need to stop because Jonas hasn't proven anything in the NBA. He's a project. He's been decent, nothing great. And I wouldn't say he's been any better than Tristan. If you're going to go out on a limb and say anyone who the Cavaliers should have drafted, you'd say Klay Thompson or Kawhi Leonard. Two guys who Chris Grant really wanted in that draft, and I know about that. The Cavaliers were very interested. The Cavaliers thought they were going to wind up with Klay Thompson later in the lottery, and they thought they could wind up with Kawhi Leonard. Chris Grant kept trying to trade back in, and all the trades kept failing, especially when that Milwaukee and Sacramento trade went through a few years ago, and that was what basically prevented the Cavs from going in there and getting a guy like Klay Thompson and Kawhi Leonard. Trust me, they wanted them both. They were number 3 and 4 on the Cavaliers draft board last year. 3 years ago. But, obviously the failures of Chris Grant, he messed up in the draft badly. I honestly, Harrison Barnes has had a bad year, but I think the one knock on Chris Grant is that he didn't land Andre Drummond.
Who's working out really well with the Pistons.
Yeah, well, Andre's a fantastic player. He really is. He's going to be a star in the NBA. And
where does he rank on the centers list right now?
I think Andre was the perfect pick at number 8 or 9 for the Pistons, wherever he went. And I said the Cavaliers, it was a little high for Drummond to go, but if you're going to take a calculated risk at that pick, don't take it on a shooting guard. Take it on the risk. Andre Drummond is a risk, but he has much higher potential than Dion Waiters.
The ceiling is a lot higher, is what you're saying. If you're going to roll the dice on something that can get you $1 million, not something that's going to get you $1,000.
If you're going to roll the dice on someone, roll it on Dion. I mean, roll it on Andre, not Dion. There were safer picks in there. There was Harrison Barnes, who was a safe pick. There were safe picks in that draft to go and grab. And Chris Grant failed to do it with all of them. So, obviously, I mean, the Irving pick was an obvious. At 29 other GMs would have made that pick. It was pulled around the league, and I think 99% of the scouts in the NBA would have made the same pick too. And me being from the University of Arizona, I still would not have taken Derek Williams number 1, even though I love Derek and I talk very highly about him on the show.
Right.
But he was, you don't take a tweener number 1 when a franchise point guard is sitting there in the wing.
Well, let me bounce over to the Cleveland Browns for just a quick second. There's a reason
why.
I
I hope this lights a fire under the Browns, just like it did with the Cavs. If the Browns could pull off 4 wins in a row next year, I'd be thrilled.
Hell, they're halfway to the playoffs with 4 wins. No, but I wanted to do this. And by the way, are you tangent? Are you getting excited for the movie Draft Day with Kevin Costner? I'm getting excited.
I am. I think it's very realistic.
I'm seeing the Johnny Manziel thing written all over it. Are we going to trade up to get the number 1 pick? I don't know, but
I think that was a Lombardi and Banner thing. I thought they would have done it to hit a home run. Ray Farmer seems like he's basically a much smarter football mind. Joe Banner was a cap guy who had always been on the business side of things, never personnel, and then they gave the guy control over the personnel, and basically he was running a Nazi regime in there. I mean, he was, not a Nazi regime. I take that back. He's more like Kim Jong-un. He's a dictator. He was a dictator.
I was gonna say
that's how it was run.
Zach, I was gonna
say running.
Zach.
It was basically he had everyone below him. I mean, you should have heard what people said within that organization about Joe Banner. I mean, it was ridiculous. I don't even know what Lombardi ever did in Cleveland. I really don't know if Lombardi ever did anything. He was kept behind the scenes the whole time. He never really showed his face ever. I mean, your own general manager wasn't even there at that press conference to introduce the head coach.
Yeah, very, very odd. No, a second ago I was going to say, don't walk back your comments. Don't walk back your comments calling him Nazi, and then you went to Kim Jong-un. So,
I put that instead. That's more. It's basically he's a dictator. That's what Banner was. That's what he was. It's Fidel Castro type. He was not the Adolf Hitler.
Hey, you know what? Don't get me started
totally
on Obamacare.
Different.
Don't get me started on Obamacare and what we have going on in our own country right now, because that's a whole different topic for Dan Johnson with Panda, People Against NDAA, who's coming up in less than an hour on Agree to Disagree.
I'm sitting in my office the other day, and I'm on the computer. I hit Twitter in the morning. I get into work, and I hit Twitter. I was like, I see people talking about it. I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I was like, I thought it was a joke. I see Banner and Lombardi fired. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I keep reading more, and I was like, oh my God. I remember sending you a text, and I was like, it's 9 in the morning my time, 7 in the morning back in California, and I was like, I'll just text you anyways.
Yeah, well, the reason I brought it up is because I've seen a couple reports. One, and we're going to have Rob Troutman from Sports on Tap coming up right after you, Zach, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the Cleveland Browns. But the reason I brought it up is because I've been reading reports. Number one, it seems like something with the league was forcing them to bring Mike Lombardi in as part of the deal for Jimmy.
Not Lombardi, it was Banner.
Or I'm sorry, Banner. And Banner
from what I get is
brings
the
in
league
Lombardi.
basically wanted to pair Joe Banner, from what I understand about this, with Jimmy Haslam. They wanted to bring a guy in who was who had been in the business side for a long time, who had a lot of success in Philadelphia, acquiring a new stadium, being able to put together a stable organization, bring in guys like Alex Shiner, bring in guys even like Ray Farmer. And I think Banner's downfall was the fact that he had everybody reporting directly to him. And it wasn't, the coach wasn't even reporting to the GM. It was the coach goes to the CEO, the GM goes to the CEO. It was a weird philosophy how everything was done by Joe Banner. And then he would go to Jimmy Haslam. It was basically Joe Banner's football team with Jimmy Haslam behind the scenes just owning it. It was Joe Banner's team. And now what I get out of it is Alex Shiner, he's a genius. Shiner's a genius. He's the one who basically secured Dallas's new stadium and got all the funding for that. And look what he's done on the business side. Shiner's done a lot of good stuff. They're renovating the stadium now. They went from the Cleveland Clinic to UH, bigger deals. I mean, bigger deals all around just for sponsorship, everything from Shiner. They're on 5 different radio stations now in the Cleveland area for game day.
Yeah,
I mean,
by the way, can I ever get him on iHeartRadio, though? Can I ever get him on internet radio? I can't seem to find him.
No, I think it's illegal streaming. I think that's why. I think it's localized coverage only.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that at all. Like I really care about
watching
the Chargers.
I watch all the games anyways. I don't ever miss Browns games to begin with. I don't know why, but I never miss them to begin with.
Because you were born with the disease. It's hereditary. If you're born in Ohio, that's how it happens. But anyway, back.
And it's funny thinking of it the other day. I'm like, someone goes, "Oh, well, even more dysfunction in the Browns organization." I said, "I love this move." I said, "I'm not one hating it." I said, "I'd much rather have. I have a lot more faith in this draft now with Ray Farmer running everything and Alex Shiner sticking to the business side than I do with Joe Banner running our freaking draft again."
Yeah.
Look at how miserable last year is. Mingo was semi-serviceable as a rookie. He was all right. Everybody else sucked from that draft.
Yeah, Mingo was a little injured.
Armani Bryant was good, but some of our late-round picks contributed. But I really can't say anything positive about last year's draft. I mean, I remember the day Lombardi came in here. I mean, not the day he came in here, but before when he was talking about on NFL Network how Josh Gordon was the biggest waste of a pick he's ever seen in the NFL. And how Russell Wilson was the worst pick of the entire draft a couple of years ago.
Go figure. That is brilliant that you're going to remember that. That Russell Wilson is the biggest waste, worst quarterback in the draft, and that. By the way, who was shopping Josh Gordon last year? Who would that have been in the organization?
Yeah, Lombardi and Banner for a second-round pick. This is a guy who racked up 1,700 yards with Brandon Weeden and Jason Campbell throwing the football.
And missing the first 2 games of the year. Don't forget.
Yes, and he's still. I think with a decent quarterback, the guy's going to get to 2,000. I don't see how it doesn't happen. He's so elusive. He's fast as hell. He's big. He reminds me of Randy Moss in his heyday. He really does.
You just air it up, and he's going to bring it down. And he's faster than everyone on the field. He's a little bit of a character concern. You got to keep a close eye on him so he doesn't do something stupid. He reminds me a lot of Randy Moss. That's a pretty good fair comparison.
Yeah, a lot. And if the Browns can go and add, from the mock drafts I've seen so far, whether they had Johnny Manziel or Teddy Bridgewater or Blake Bortles, I'd be happy with any one of the three. But I really like Manziel and I really like Bridgewater a lot. I just haven't seen enough film on Bortles. And like I said, I don't work in the NFL, so I'm not going to sit there and study tape. I'm going to go and read what people tell me about Blake Bortles. And from what I saw in the bowl game in the Fiesta Bowl, I did like Blake Bortles. But I mean, if they manage to land Kelvin, if they can land Benjamin from FSU, if can land a good wide receiver to pair along with Josh Gordon, and if they somehow manage to draft Hyde in the second round from like all the mocks I've been seeing, I'd be ecstatic with those 3 picks. Whether it's Bridgewater or Manziel, they get a big-time wide receiver at 26, and you land Hyde in the second round. I would be absolutely ecstatic.
Yeah,
but they do have other holes to fill. Their middle linebackers were just basically Craig Robertson was terrible last year. They really need to improve the linebacking core, and I think now there's a much better chance you re-sign T.J. Ward and Alex Mack because we're not going off of Joe Banner, the mindset of Joe Banner who doesn't value centers in the NFL.
Yeah, it's 1/5 of your line. It's very important. It's the closest direct point between you
and
the quarterback. And if you
I'm not
anchor
saying they're going to retain him, but
yeah.
there's now a higher chance. I trust Ray Farmer as a football mind. I think he's a bright guy.
Well, Zach, let me back up for a second because we went off on this tangent, which is fantastic because this is the unhappy hour. It's the only place where Cleveland Indians, Browns, and Cavalier fans get a chance to just fully vent. The only Los Angeles-centric Cleveland-based sports show that I'm currently aware of. But the reason I went off into that Cleveland Browns tangent, which most of our listeners will appreciate, I want to bring it back to basketball for a second because Jimmy Haslam has it's come out in recent interviews with the Plain Dealer that there's a bit of a seller's remorse. You hear about buyer's remorse all the time, but he has now second-guessed the wisdom of cutting Chudzinski loose so fast. And I like Chudzinski's ability. It was, hey, it's 4th down, we're going for it. He was aggressive.
You saw what he could do when they were healthy. The problem is you have a lack of depth. There's a lack of depth. You had no draft picks next year. This is my question. How do you expect a team to improve when you don't improve the team through the draft and you make, yes, calculated free agent signings, but minimal ones? Desmond Bryant, who you signed in free agency, got injured. Paul Kruger wasn't a big-time contributor. Those are your 2 big free agent signings during the year. Those are your 2 big ones. And Bryant got injured, and Kruger didn't really contribute too much. So how do you expect to improve a 5-win football team who's down to their 3rd-string quarterback?
Yeah, but don't forget you also give away your starting running back a couple games into the year, which is almost unheard of.
That too. You don't have a running game. So you went from being a 3-2 football team. You saw what they did when they had talent on the field. They were a good football team. They were.
Yeah, 3 in a row in the middle. In the beginning of the season.
They beat the snot out of the Bengals. They beat the crap out of the Bills.
Vikings.
And you go out there and you played the Vikings well on the road and you beat them too. And then you go out there and you even beat Baltimore at home. You're 4-5, and you would have beaten Kansas City at Devon Best, another free agent mess by the front office.
No. One more thing.
Muffing the punt after Travis Benjamin tears his ACL. It's another football game the Browns probably would have won. So you take that and you look at it, and that's the sample size they get. Like, yes, I understand they lost against the Patriots, but they were down to their last legs. They had absolutely no depth. You weren't going to win football games at that point. It just wasn't going to happen. And I think Trzynski should have been given another year. Pat Shurmur, I was all for firing that moron after the first game. I never liked Pat Shurmur.
After the first game. Well, no, don't forget the Browns front office also called Devon Best a high-character guy. I couldn't believe, with all the reports and the problems, the mental issues, the drug issues, the crazy psychological stuff going on with Devon Best, as reported all across the ESPN and Plain Dealer. They called him a high-character signing and then paired him up with Josh Gordon, saying, oh, well, here's your mentor. He'll take care of you. No, he's a high-character guy. You guys need to shadow each other. Are you freaking kidding me? So, like, when I'm talking about Jimmy Haslam possibly having seller's regret, saying, hey, you know what? Maybe Trzynski wasn't the real problem here, and we could have given him another year or two to see what he could do with a healthy team, with a little bit of restocking in the draft and free agency. Get rid of Banner, get rid of Lombardi, but maybe keep the coach. I'm just kind of gonna bring it back to the Cavs here. Because is it possible that Dan Gilbert, after seeing a 4-game winning streak, and Anthony Bennett maybe getting into a lot better shape, performing a little better, Tristan Thompson just having a mammoth game the other night against the Pistons, Kyrie and Dion playing a little better together, is it possible that Dan Gilbert might have seller's regret on Chris Grant, or was it time for him to go?
It was time for Chris Grant to go. Chris had his years in Cleveland. I mean, with 2 number 1 picks and 2 number 4s, you had your opportunity to improve that team, and you failed miserably. Miserably. They still don't – I mean, it took up until right before Chris Grant started. And I think the reason the move was made was because I think Gilbert was afraid of him making a panic move at the trade deadline. I think that was probably the reason.
Oh.
I mean, I knew the night before – I remember texting you, telling you that Chris Grant was going to be fired, and telling you don't tweet about it. I said, please. I remember exactly saying that, and I remember like, damn, I've got this news and I can't even break it.
But hey, and I said as a good journalist, hey, sometimes I know what I know because I don't know nothing, man. And I treated something cryptic out, like, hey, big moves coming tomorrow. I'm actually kind of surprised Mike Brown survived. He only made it 5 games.
I knew that night because when I asked, they said Brown will be here tomorrow, and I said, okay, just making sure. And I was surprised at the time. I still don't understand it, but part of me gets it. I mean, Gilbert's comments made no sense the next day. They made no sense because if you believe in the players, why don't you believe in the GM who drafted those players? That's what just didn't make sense to me when Gilbert made those comments. And what I get out of it is that my guess is that probably he was discussing with other people in the organization, some other people in the NBA, that it would have been a very poor move to keep Chris Grant because who was basically fighting for his job, to go out there and make a panic move to get this franchise to win now.
Yeah, penny wise and pound foolish. Just something maybe great in the short term, but long term it's going to cripple the team. A lot like when LeBron James was the de facto GM of the Cavaliers, pulling the trigger on all these trades. Oh, we got to improve, and then you turn around and go, wow, we have no draft picks. We're way over the luxury cap. We can't get rid of these expiring contracts because they're not expiring yet. We are completely handcuffed because LeBron James was our GM and our CEO essentially for a couple of years. Thanks, LeBron. We gave you everything you wanted, and it kind of handcuffed us into making some bigger moves while he completely talked with his buddy Dwayne Wade to deplete the Miami Heat down to nothing so they can get 3 big-time free agents. Yeah, I can understand that then. Well, if it's his time to go, a 4-game winning streak is a pretty decent way to start things off with the new era, the new regime, and I certainly like seeing Anthony Bennett put something out there. My final question, well, two final questions because we got to wrap this up real fast. Well, I want to ask you about the All-Star game, but I want to ask you, instead of Anthony Bennett, who else would have been a much better draft pick from Chris Grant last year?
I kept saying all along I like Victor Oladipo, and Oladipo's the one guy I would have went with at number 1. It wasn't Ben McLemore because nothing thrilled me about Ben McLemore. It was all Victor Oladipo.
And I liked Oladipo when I caught him in March Madness. I saw a lot of passion.
I was at the Celtics game last week in Boston, and I was at, Oladipo was playing with Celtics versus Magic, and I have to say, Oladipo is very impressive. He is I really like him. I've liked him since I was watching him in college a year ago. I really like Oladipo's game. He's fast. He's a great defender. Would have really been a great fit with Kyrie Irving. I just still will never understand the Dion Waiters pick because they really never interviewed him. You didn't see how he could work with Irving. You didn't bring him in for a workout. It just shocked me. And I heard the day before the draft, that remember hearing that the Cavaliers were going to select Waiters too.
Right.
I remember watching Dion training in Las Vegas. And I remember just seeing him train. And I said, this guy's going to shoot up draft boards. But when I heard the Cavs were interested, I still was like, what's the way they're going to be stupid enough and take Dion Waiters? I was just sitting there, and people were like, you don't think they're going to take him? I was like, no. I was like, who would take Waiters at 4? The guy's jumped 15 spots off draft boards over the last week and a half.
Zach, never underestimate the ability of the Three Stooges of all three Cleveland sports teams to do ridiculous things. I don't know
about Chris Antonetti being a stooge or Mark Shapiro because most of their signings are pretty calculated. I'm not saying they've had a lot of successful years in Cleveland, but they've done pretty well with the limited payroll. And especially last year, I got to give them all the credit in the world. I mean, look what a good coach did with his team, a good manager did with the Indians. Took them from being a 67-win team to being, or 69, whatever they were, to being a 92-win baseball team last year with small additions. I mean, all they did was add really Nick Swisher to that team and Mark Reynolds, and Reynolds wasn't even there after half the year. It's amazing what a good manager can do and a great pitching coach in Mickey Callaway. I mean, you've seen why. It showed last year. You can go, okay, Frank Cona's clearly a World Series manager. This is something Cleveland hasn't had in forever. And you saw that last year when Frank Kona came through those doors and really opened up this team. I mean, look at the way Ubaldo rebounded in the second half. Guys like Corey Kluber, who was terrible the year before, was fantastic most of last year. Zach McAllister. I mean, you look at a reclamation project like Scott Kazmir. You just go through that, and you're like, wow. I was really, really impressed with that team last year. And Danny Salazar, too. If you resign Ubaldo right now, all I can say is, Cleveland, I think it's going to be a great year for baseball if they can get Ubaldo back on the contract under a 1 or 2 year deal.
Well, we'll see what they're able to do when you see the money coming in from the Japanese player over to the Yankees. They're spending like crazy, and I'm sure there's a market for Ubaldo. Last question for you, Zach. NBA All-Star Weekend, what should we look forward to? What are you paying attention to?
Not much. It's All-Star Weekend. I'm kind of sick of All-Star Weekend, to tell you the truth. I've been there multiple times, honestly. It's a fun weekend, but nothing really to look forward to. I just lucky I'm not there this year.
Is LeBron ever going to do a dunk contest?
Nope. I mean, I wanted him to so badly, but this dunk contest could be pretty good. I mean, there's some talented guys in there. I just, like I said, NBA All-Star Weekend's always been the time where I've always had off and I've always enjoyed it. And I'm going to sit there and enjoy it this year.
Who is going to win the three-point shootout? Take a guess. Put your money down. Put a 10. Put a fin on the
honestly,
table.
I haven't even looked to see who's actually in the three-point shootout.
Well, that's fair enough. I guess I'll raise my
hand. A
hand.
little attention I've paid to All-Star Weekend this year just because it just hasn't had to concern me yet.
I'll raise my hand and admit that I'm not really sure who's in it myself. So, anyway, I guess we're all going to find out together. Zach, this was an abbreviated show. It's a crazy lineup today. We got to bounce over to Rob Troutman from Sports on Tap. We're going to talk strictly Cleveland Browns. And then we're going to bring in Dan Johnson, founder of Panda, People Against NDAA, on the Agree to Disagree channel. So, Zach, thank you for joining us again, as always. And here's to the Cavs, maybe continuing that winning streak on the flip side of the All-Star break.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, I'll talk with you soon. All right, there goes Zak Baris, everybody. My name's Brian Engelman. Thank you very much for listening. Please check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. Go to youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. Click subscribe. I would appreciate that. Check out our almost 3 years of archived shows. Geez, Zach's been with us for almost 3 years. Zach's been with us for a very long time. Lifelong Cleveland sports fan and NBA scout Zak Baris. Follow him on Twitter at ZBaris. That's ZBARIS. On Facebook, we are The New American Media. So search The New American Media with spaces in between and like the page. And on Twitter, we're at American_media_. So if you're listening live, this is going to take just a matter of seconds. And if you're listening after the fact, it will be a completely different segment. So please be sure to look for it. We're going to bring in Rob Troutman from Sports on Tap. We just want to get an update on the Browns and what's going on. I know we touched on that with Zach a little bit. Because, hey, when you're a sports fan, it doesn't mean you only pay attention to one sport. And that's what we do. Just because we're into sports doesn't mean we don't talk politics. On Agree to Disagree, coming up in just a moment, everybody. We'll be right back. And flip.
You are listening to the New American Media.